Why don't we bring Xander? Let's bring on this gentleman here, the host of the NFL Matchup Show, Sal Paolantonio. Sal, thank you very much for joining me.
Oh, Pat, it's great to be here. I mean, we got the last week of the season, Pat. We got 5 playoff spots on the line. 4 division titles, Pat, are on the line on Saturday and Sunday. Yeah. You can't really get much better for the last week of the season. But I want to dovetail off of what you just said with the Arizona Cardinals. Right. They came into your building and they didn't punt. Pat.
Yeah.
That's an embarrassment. But I have and it goes back to, what they're doing defensively. I sent you these notes from our film study and from our ESPN stats and information. The film study and the numbers show that the Eagles play the worst man coverage in the NFL. Opposing quarterbacks have a 79 QBR. When the Eagles play man coverage, that's nearly perfect, with 26 touchdown passes and only 5 interceptions. So the Eagles need to get off their man coverage. They don't have the personnel to execute it, and they need to get off of it starting this week against Tyrod Taylor and the New York Giants. And so that's a big, big issue. And it goes back to this. 9 Eagles combined to rush the passer 62 times off the edge against the Cardinals. They had 1 pressure.
And one sack.
One pressure and 62 chances.
Yeah.
Man, that's bad on defense. And offensively, you have 4 Pro Bowlers. Swift, Brown, Lane Johnson, Jason Kelce. You need to run your offense through your 2 offensive Pro Bowlers, Swift and Brown. Mm-hmm. The Eagles ran 26 plays after halftime. Only one of them was an A.J. Brown target. 1 target, 1 catch in halftime after the half. And it was an 18-yard gain. It was their longest play of the half. So going forward, you need to play less man-to-man, 1. And on offense, you need your offense to run through your Pro Bowlers, Brown and Swift. Now, I don't know how much the Eagles are going to play their stars in this game. It's a big question mark. Right. Big.
Yeah, you mentioned there's a lot of weather possibilities, too, on Sunday up in the Meadowlands, which also may factor in to how much the Eagles play their stars. But let me start with a comment you made about the defense, Sal. You're into week 18 now. Can a team, because you've stood in hundreds of locker rooms and hundreds of sidelines, can a team going into week 18 make a systemic change like that to their defense and say, we're going to stop or we're going to cut way back on man-to-man and we're going to go zone? Is that even feasible to do?
I believe so. Matt Patricia is a super smart guy. He's got a lot of experience. He's got to mix and match his personnel a little bit better. Maybe play some matchup zone defense. That will help a little bit for sure. And they've got to be a little bit more creative with their stunts and games on the defensive line so they get after the quarterback.
Right.
And it goes back to also their defensive tackle play. Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis, you're going to be blown away by these numbers. Jalen Carter is 22 years old. He has 528 defensive snaps. Jordan Davis is 23 years old. He has 502 defensive snaps. Fletcher Cox is 33 years old. He has 684 defensive snaps. He stays on the field and is more effective than these 2 young players from Georgia. I don't know what's going on, but that's just insane.
That is insane. And all right, well, let's broaden the discussion then about it. Just give me your take now as a veteran football watcher and a veteran watcher of the Philadelphia Eagles. Is a team, Sal goes 10-1. And we talked all season long, you and I, about how, all right, look, they're winning the games. The teams that are put in front of them, they're winning the games. Yeah, they're not blowing everybody out, but they're 10-1. I mean, you are what your record says you are. Now they go 1-4 in their last 5. What is it that you think has happened here? If there was a broad answer as to what has turned this season around so badly, what would you say, or could you put your finger on?
Pat, I think, first of all, they had a lot of injuries in their secondary that they had to deal with. Second of all, they lost confidence in their defensive coordinator. They couldn't get any kind of pass rush on third down, and their man-to-man coverage wasn't working. So when you're giving up in a passing league, when you're giving up big plays to Tyrod Taylor and to Kyler Murray, that's one thing. That's different from Dak Prescott and Brock Purdy and the Niners and the Cowboys.
Right.
So they held their own against Kansas City. They did get lucky with some drops, for sure. They held their own with Buffalo. But if Gabe Davis zigs to the right in the end zone and Josh Allen throws it to him, there is no overtime, there is no Eagles possession, and the game's over.
Right. Right.
So they were the beneficiaries of some poor play by Kansas City and Buffalo.
Right.
I get that, but they have good, solid, experienced personnel. They have a smart defensive assistant who's calling plays in Matt Patricia, who's done it at the highest level. Remember, he's the one who designed Malcolm Butler's undercut of that play in the Super Bowl that picked off Russell Wilson at the goal line and gave Tom Brady another ring.
Right.
That was Matt Patricia who designed that defense that picked off Russell Wilson at the goal line. And Malcolm Butler, Brady was the MVP, by the way, in that game. You remember that, right?
Yeah.
And so after the game, Brady gives him the truck. And Malcolm Butler, at this point, is feeling like, hey, not for nothing, but I don't want a red truck. I want a black truck.
No, my
So
God.
yes, this is a true story. I wrote it about in my book because I covered that game.
Right.
So he made Brady turn the red truck in and get a black truck.
And
Brady said, okay, no problem. You just won the Super Bowl with an interception at the goal line. So it was Patricia who designed that defense. And so he's a smart guy. Was Sirianni right to demote Sean Desai? I don't know, but he needed to do something to shake something up, and it obviously hasn't worked. And he's this week he said we got to get back together, we got to stick together. Let's see what happens.
All right, now let's talk about the coaching side of it. Then, now you were kind enough to send me the transcripts of the recent press conferences, both Brian Johnson and Matt Patricia, and I made reference to you. It's just that I saw just a ton of read speak in there. It's on me. I got to do better, et cetera, including Nick Sirianni. Do you think the Eagles have the coaching savvy now to make whatever pivot they have to make to get this ship right in time for wild card round?
I do believe that. If you want to flip to the offensive side of the ball, Brian Johnson needs to hold Jalen Hurts a little bit more accountable in terms of changing the play at the line of scrimmage and improvising, and also going through his progressions in a way that allows them to complete passes. But as I said before, you need to get A.J. Brown, move him around.
Right.
Keep the defense guessing. Run shallow crossers that he's so good at. He's so big. He's so strong. He's fast. His hands are strong. He beats one-on-one coverage easily. He catches the ball in traffic. Get him to the point where you get the ball in his hands and you get those yards after the catch. And then the quick hitters to DeAndre Swift. You got 2 Pro Bowlers blocking for him. Mailata could have gone to the Pro Bowl. And you got DeAndre Swift, who's one of the top 5 backs in the league. I mean, it should run through your 2 Pro Bowlers.
Right.
But I don't know how much we're going to see in this game. In the weather, that's supposed to be bad, like real bad. Rain, sleet, snow, freezing rain in North Jersey, Sunday, all day Sunday. And with that turf, it's very problematic. So there'll be scoreboard watching. If the Cowboys are dump trucking Washington, right, then they got to make a business decision about what they do in terms of, okay, we want to get right in this game, but we don't want to be wrong in terms of how we deploy our personnel.
All right. This question tangentially does apply to the Eagles, Sal. I saw a piece in The Athletic about teams that get hot in December. And does that translate into a meaningful run in the postseason? Statistically speaking, the answer was no, that there was very little deviation as to if a team was, say, 4-0 in December or 3-1 in December, went on a big run, did they go deep into the playoffs? Do you think with Philadelphia, to use the phrase, staggering into the playoffs, does that have an impact once the ball is kicked off in the first wild card game?
I don't think so, Pat. I've seen hot teams falter. I've seen teams that rest players, die on the vine, like the Ravens in 2019. They were 14-2. That was one of the best examples. Right. Lamar Jackson had an MVP season, and they scored 12 points against the Titans and lost at home.
Right.
So I've seen a lot of different things. To me, I've always found the Ron Jaworski postulate, if you will, that the game is about individual matchups and how you create mismatches through formation variation and coaching and through play design and play calling, whether you have the right tools to do that against your opponent. Now, let's just say the Eagles wind up going on the road to Tampa.
Right.
They're the 5 seed. They're going to play the 4 seed.
Right.
I believe that will be a Monday night game. I think you look at it as a possible Monday night game. The last time it was a Monday night game, when in the NFC, when the 4 played the 5.
Right.
So I think that could happen.
Okay.
That gives you an extra day.
Right.
And if I'm Nick Sirianni, I go to Tampa early. And I let the guys put their feet up and enjoy the warm weather.
Yeah.
I find a place to practice. I let them get their mind right. Gives you an extra day with Devontae Smith's ankle. Right. And lets you go. There's nothing like building the bond of brotherhood like a road trip.
Right.
Get out of the cacophony of Philadelphia and all of the, noise and plenty of that. There's plenty of it. So just I personally think it's a good Jeffrey Lurie and Don Smolenski, the team president, are going to hate me for saying this because you make a lot of money in the playoffs if you're the home team, especially in a wild card round, where you still have control of everything and the league doesn't really take over. I think it's better for the team to go on the road week 1. I really do.
Yeah.
If there are signs of improvement this week, that will be a good thing. And then you just rest and you reconnect and you reconfigure to play the Bucs on the road if the Bucs beat the Panthers, which we think they're going to do.
Correct. All right, Sal Pal, the host of the NFL Matchup Show. I got a few minutes left with you here. Let's look around the league now. You mentioned coming on that the Bears-Packers game has all the elements of a snow globe game with some weather expected in Green Bay. Packers win, they are in. And could end up the 6th seed if the Rams decide to throw the towel in at San Francisco at the same time. Both games are late games. Tell me, do you think Green Bay holds serve at home against a suddenly surging Chicago Bear team?
Well, Jordan Love is playing at a very high level. Justin Fields is trying to make the case for him to stay in Chicago. I think this game is a toss-up. The great equalizer will be the snow.
Right.
The storm that's coming through the East Coast up the F995 corridor is nothing compared to the storm that's going through Iowa, Illinois, and Wisconsin. That's a bad, bad snowstorm.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, that's a big game. Obviously, the Packers have fought their way back in. They've had the classic up and down season. Green Bay, they got hot, then they staggered, a couple bad losses, and now they've caught fire again. If the Packers win, if the Packers stumble against the Bears and Seattle beats Arizona, which is no given either, given what we just saw, Seattle would in fact take that number 7 seed. Okay, Sal, in the AFC, the big game is the Sunday nighter. Buffalo, as you and I talked about, and we both said it was going to happen, fought their way back now and have rattled off 3 straight wins and are, I think it's 3, it might be 4, and have fought their way now back into a chance now to get the 2 seed if they beat Miami Sunday night. How do you see this game?
Well, Josh Allen has thrown multiple pass touchdowns against the Dolphins in all 12 games he's faced Miami, including the playoffs. That, Pat Callahan, is the longest streak by any quarterback against any single opponent in NFL history, going back to 1920. Okay, right. Pat?
Okay.
So that'll get your attention right there. Allen has thrown He threw 4 touchdown passes and 1 rushing touchdown in their week 4 demolition in Buffalo. And he finished with a perfect passer rating. So Josh Allen has got their number. There's no question about that.
Right.
The loss of Bradley Chubb is huge. Why Mike McDaniel had him in the game in garbage time when he was getting boat raced by Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. I was there. I called that game on radio with Steve Levy. We couldn't believe that Bradley Chubb was still in the game.
Yeah.
He was. He had a contact knee injury.
Yeah.
That's a severe setback for a team that came into that game last week, second in the league in sacks and number 1 in the league in quarterback hits, the Dolphins on defense. But the Dolphins couldn't stop the Ravens at all. And I think that they'll have a hard time stopping Buffalo in this game. I really do.
I do too, Sal. I think Miami, unfortunately, their schedule has just shown. The previous game, as you mentioned, against Buffalo, 48-20. The shellacking they took by the Ravens, and they lost to Kansas City over in Europe. They have not shown, other than squeaking by Dallas, they've not shown against top tier talent.
No, they came into Philadelphia and got embarrassed as well. The game I'm actually really focused on is Dallas.
Right.
Dallas at Washington. Dallas scores 15 points per game less on the road than they do at home. That's the largest point differential in that category in the NFL.
Yeah.
So you talk about holding serve. All right. Well, it's on their racket to go to Washington, where they've had trouble winning over the years, and win the game. They don't have to be convincing. They just need to win on the road, Pat.
Yeah.
And listen, this is a game where I anticipate they will just try to put it in the defense's hands, and they'll be very conservative offensively. Will it be enough? And Ron Rivera would like nothing better. Former Eagle, former Bear, tend to upset Dallas on the final game of his career in Washington.
And I think it's a classic game, Sal, where if the Cowboys don't they don't send a message to the Commanders early, that's not your day, and to get the golf clubs in the trunk.
Yes.
Then they could find themselves with a real problem there. So
my only worry, Pat, is Dallas loses and the Eagles lose too.
Oh my gosh. Oh God, that would probably put a nice little cherry on top of this last run by the Eagles. But that would be devastating if that happened. Both games at the same time, late Sunday.
Yeah, so it's all how, and I'm not saying that the Eagles are inferior to the Giants. It's how Nick Sirianni wants to play the game in that weather on that field.
Yeah,
I mean, that's to me is how is Nick Sirianni going to manage this game? That's the key thing.
All right, Sal, I know you got to run. The matchup show, I'm sure this weekend, you probably got a lot lined up, week 18, right?
Yeah, we got a big show. Listen, I don't want to take time away from my friends Gary Myers and Pat Leonard on This Week in Pro Football. So I'm going to say ciao, and we will see you next week, Pat Callahan.
All right, Sal. Thanks very much, pal. Appreciate it. Sal Paolantonio joining me here on This Week in Pro Football. Sal's got some hits he's got to do. So he joined me a little bit early this week, and thank you very much for that. Make sure you check out the matchup show on Saturday and Sunday on the ESPN networks. All right, listen, we get back here. We're going to take a couple of minutes. Let's take a look at that Week 18 schedule. Remember, both Saturday and Sunday games this week. So we'll take a look at that. We'll take a look at the playoff standings and who is in right now and who is on the bubble. We'll do that next on This Week in Pro Football, presented by Kennedy Ford.